Don't sign those papers tomorrow, Sarah. Wait 3 days. I know what I'm talking about, child. I still remember the way Mrs. Eleanor Washington's fingers tightened around my wrist that night. Her grip was surprisingly strong for an 82-year-old woman everyone said had lost her mind to dementia. It was December 15th, just past 11 p.m., and I was making my final rounds at Shady Pines nursing home before my shift ended. I'm Sarah Chen, and back then, I was 28 years old, working the night shift as a nurse at one of Portland's most prestigious elder care facilities. Prestigious. That's what they called it in the brochures, anyway. The reality was far less glamorous understaffed hallways, flickering fluorescent lights, and the constant smell of industrial cleaner trying to mask something underneath. I'd been working there for 3 years, ever since my parents died in a car accident on I-84. Black ice, gone in an instant. My younger brother Danny was only 13 then, and suddenly I was his guardian, his provider, his everything. The night shift paid slightly more, and it meant I could be home when Danny got back from school, help him with homework, make sure he ate something other than cereal for dinner. Most of the residents at Shady Pines were pleasant enough, though many barely registered my presence. Dementia, Alzheimer's, stroke-related cognitive decline. The third floor where I worked was filled with people whose minds had become unreliable narrators of their own lives. The other nurses moved through their rounds mechanically, doing the bare minimum. I understood why. It was exhausting, heartbreaking work, and burnout was practically guaranteed. But I couldn't help myself. I'd talk to them, really talk to them. I'd ask Mr. Peterson about his days as a mailman. Even though he'd tell me the same stories every single night, I'd brush Mrs. Kowalski's hair the way she liked it, listening to her speak in Polish about her childhood in Warsaw, and I'd sit with Mrs. Eleanor Washington, the woman everyone else avoided. Eleanor was different from the other residents. She'd only been at Shady Pines for 8 months, admitted by a distant nephew who'd claimed she could no longer care for herself. The intake form said severe dementia, prone to paranoid delusions, possibly dangerous to herself and others. The day shift nurses whispered about her how she'd accused the previous facility of murdering her granddaughter, how she ranted about conspiracies and corruption. "She's completely gone," Nurse Patricia told me during my first week on Eleanor's floor. "Don't waste your time trying to have conversations with her. Just give her the meds and move on." But when I met Eleanor, I saw something different. Yes, she had moments of confusion. She'd sometimes call me by her granddaughter's name, Christine. She'd talk about cases she'd presided over as if she were still on the bench, even though she'd retired from the federal court system 15 years ago. But there was a clarity in her eyes that didn't match the diagnosis in her chart. I started spending extra time with her. I'd bring her tea the way she liked it, Earl Grey with a touch of honey. She'd tell me about her career, about growing up in Oakland, about her late husband who'd been a public defender, and sometimes she'd tell me about Christine. Christine had been Eleanor's only grandchild, her daughter's daughter, a bright, beautiful girl who'd become a nurse, just like me. She'd worked at a care facility in Seattle and had died there 18 months ago. The official cause was a sudden cardiac event. She was 31 years old with no history of heart problems. "They killed her," Eleanor would say, her voice dropping to a whisper. "She found out what they were doing, and they killed her." The other nurses would roll their eyes when Eleanor started talking like this, but I'd learned to just listen. Not agree, not disagree, just listen. It seemed to calm her. Then, about 6 weeks before that December night, things at Shady Pines started to change. Budget cuts, they said. The corporate office was implementing efficiency measures. 3 nurses were let go, activities were reduced, and Mr. Kowalski on the second floor died suddenly in his sleep, the third unexpected death in as many months. I started noticing other things too. Medication errors that seemed too frequent to be accidental. Residents who were unusually sedated, drooling in their wheelchairs when they'd been alert just days before. I mentioned it to the director of nursing, a cold woman named Margaret Vance, but she dismissed my concerns. "These are very sick, very elderly people, Sarah. Death is part of the process. You need to develop a thicker skin if you're going to work in elder care." Then came December 14th. I was called into Director Vance's office along with 2 other night shift nurses. She sat behind her pristine desk, not a paper out of place, and delivered the news with all the warmth of a tax audit. As you know, Shady Pines is implementing necessary cost-saving measures. We're restructuring the nursing staff. Your positions are being eliminated, effective immediately. However, we're prepared to offer you a generous severance package, 2 months' salary, if you sign these agreements by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. She slid the papers across the desk. My hands shook as I picked them up. 2 months' salary. That would barely cover rent and Danny's expenses while I looked for another job. And the nursing job market in Portland was tight. I'd be lucky to find something that paid even close to what I was making here. There's a confidentiality clause, Vance continued, her voice flat. You agree not to discuss any patient care matters or internal operations of this facility with anyone outside the organization. Standard procedure. The other 2 nurses signed immediately. They wanted to get it over with, collect their payout, and leave. I stared at the papers, something gnawing at my gut. This didn't feel right. Can I have some time to think about it? I asked. Vance's expression hardened. The offer expires at 9 a.m. tomorrow, Miss Chen. If you don't sign by then, you'll receive only the minimum severance required by law, 2 weeks. I suggest you don't make an emotional decision you'll regret. I worked my final shift that night in a fog. 2 months' salary or 2 weeks. Sign away my right to talk about what I'd seen, or struggle to keep Danny fed and in school. What choice did I have? I was walking past Eleanor's room around 11 when I heard her call my name. Not Christine, Sarah. I stepped inside. She was sitting up in bed, fully alert, her reading glasses perched on her nose. There was a small notebook on her lap, and she closed it quickly when she saw me. "Come here, child," she said, patting the bed beside her. I sat down, exhausted and defeated. Before I could say anything, she took my hand. "You got the papers today, didn't you? The severance agreement." I stared at her. "How did you—" "Don't sign those papers tomorrow, Sarah. Wait 3 days. I know what I'm talking about, child. Mrs. Washington, I don't understand. If I don't sign, I'll only get 2 weeks' pay. I have my brother to take care of. I can't afford to." 3 days, she repeated, her grip tightening. "Trust me. Have I ever lied to you?" I looked into her eyes. They were completely clear, completely present. This wasn't the confused old woman the charts described. This was Judge Eleanor Washington, who'd presided over federal cases for 30 years. "What's happening here?" I whispered. She glanced at the door, then back at me. "What happened to Christine is happening here. I've been watching, recording, waiting for the right person to trust. That person is you. I don't. 3 days, Sarah. Don't sign anything. Don't tell anyone we talked. Go home to your brother. And whatever you do, don't let them rush you." I left her room with my head spinning. I barely slept that night. When 9 a.m. came, I called Vance's office. "I need more time to review the severance agreement," I said. "I'd like to consult with an attorney." The pause on the other end was heavy with anger. "You have until Friday at 9 a.m., Miss Chen. Not 1 minute longer. 3 days. Exactly what Eleanor had said. I spent the next day pretending everything was normal, but my mind was racing. That evening, I came in early for my shift and went straight to Eleanor's room. She was waiting for me. "Sit down," she said, pulling out the notebook I'd seen the night before. "I'm going to tell you what's really happening at Shady Pines, and then I'm going to tell you what we're going to do about it." For the next hour, Eleanor walked me through everything. She wasn't suffering from dementia. She'd been faking it since the day she arrived. Her nephew hadn't admitted her. She'd checked herself in under a false pretense because she'd suspected this facility was involved in the same Medicare fraud scheme that had killed Christine. Christine had been working at a sister facility in Seattle, run by the same corporation. She discovered they were over-medicating patients to keep them docile and easier to manage, then billing Medicare for services never rendered. When she threatened to report them, she died. The official cause was cardiac arrest, but Eleanor never believed it. "I couldn't prove it," Eleanor said, her voice cracking for the first time. "I'm a judge, not a detective. The police said there was no evidence of foul play. The facility's lawyers made sure the autopsy was cursory at best. I was just a grieving grandmother seeing conspiracies where there were none." She paused, wiping her eyes with a tissue. "So I did what I could do. I researched the corporation, found they owned 7 facilities across Washington and Oregon. I chose this one because it was close enough for me to investigate, but far enough that no one would recognize me. I had a doctor friend write the dementia diagnosis. I became a patient. For 8 months? I breathed. For however long it took. I watched everything, Sarah. I saw which nurses were in on it and which ones were just overworked and blind. I saw Vance ordering massive quantities of psychotropic medications that weren't matching patient charts. I documented every suspicious death, every falsified record. She opened the notebook. Page after page of meticulous handwriting, dates, times, names, medication dosages. It was a prosecutor's dream. But I couldn't get access to the financial records, Eleanor continued. I couldn't prove the Medicare fraud without seeing the billing. And I'm an old woman pretending to be senile. I couldn't exactly start demanding to see the books. So what's your plan? You, she said simply. You're being fired because Vance knows you're paying attention. She's seen you asking questions about the medication errors, about the deaths. She wants you gone before you figure out what's really happening. That severance agreement isn't just about confidentiality, it's about making sure you can't testify against them if this ever goes to court. My blood ran cold. What do I do? Don't sign. Let Friday come and go. Take your 2 weeks severance. Then, on Monday, you're going to walk into the FBI field office downtown and give them this notebook. I've already contacted an old colleague of mine, a former U.S. attorney. He's expecting you. Why can't you do it? Eleanor smiled sadly. Because right now, I'm just a senile old woman with paranoid delusions. That's what their lawyers will say. But you're a credible witness. You're a nurse who worked there. You saw the same things I did, and you can testify to it. Together, our testimonies corroborate each other. They'll destroy me, I whispered. They'll try, Eleanor agreed. But the law will protect you. Whistleblower statutes are strong. And Sarah, if we don't do this, more people will die. More Christines, more Mr. Kowalskis. I thought about my brother, about our tiny apartment and the bills piling up, about the safe choice versus the right choice. I'll do it, I said. Friday morning came. I didn't sign the papers. Vance was furious, threatening me with everything from blacklisting to legal action. I walked out of Shady Pines with 2 weeks severance and a notebook hidden in my bag. That weekend, I told Danny everything. He was 16 now, tall and serious, wise beyond his years. He'd grown up fast after losing our parents. Do it, he said without hesitation. Mom and Dad would want you to do the right thing. Monday morning, I walked into the FBI building in downtown Portland. Eleanor's colleague, a sharp-eyed man named James Morrison, was waiting for me with 2 agents. I handed them the notebook and told them everything I'd seen. We've been investigating this corporation for 8 months, one of the agents said, but we couldn't get anyone on the inside to talk. They're very good at keeping their staff quiet. What happens now? I asked. Now, we get a warrant. The next 72 hours were a blur. Federal agents descended on Shady Pines with search warrants. They seized computers, files, medication logs. They interviewed residents, those who could still speak clearly. They brought in forensic accountants who started unraveling years of Medicare fraud. Eleanor's cover was blown, of course. But it didn't matter anymore. She sat in an FBI conference room and gave a statement that took 6 hours, naming names, citing regulations, providing context that only a federal judge could provide. The scope of the fraud was staggering. Over 5 years, the corporation had stolen nearly $12 million from Medicare by billing for services never provided and over-medicating patients to reduce staffing costs. 13 patients across their 7 facilities had died under suspicious circumstances, Christine among them. Director Vance was arrested, along with the CEO of the parent corporation and 4 other administrators. The corporation was dissolved, its facilities taken into state receivership. The media coverage was intense. Former federal judge goes undercover in nursing home to expose fraud. Nurse blows whistle on Medicare scam. I gave 1 interview to a local news station and then retreated from the spotlight. I wasn't interested in being famous. I just wanted to make sure it never happened again. 3 months later, I sat in a coffee shop across from Linda Martinez, the new director of what had been Shady Pines. The state had cleaned house, brought in new management, and renamed it Riverside Care Center. "We'd like you to come back," Linda said. "As our director of nursing, we need someone who actually cares about these people, someone who won't look the other way when something's wrong." I almost laughed. "I'm 28 years old. I don't have management experience. You have something better. You have integrity, and we'll train you on the rest." The salary was almost double what I'd been making, enough to help Danny with college applications, enough to finally stop living paycheck to paycheck. I accepted. Eleanor didn't return to Riverside. Instead, she moved in with her nephew's family, the real nephew, not the fake one from her cover story. Her mind was sharp as ever, no longer pretending to be something she wasn't. She visited me at the facility once a month, always bringing cookies for the staff. We'd sit in my office and talk about the residents, about changes we were implementing, about making sure Christine's death meant something. "You gave up a lot for this," she told me one afternoon. "Those 3 days could have cost you everything." "They did cost me everything I had," I said, "but they gave me everything I needed." 2 years later, Danny graduated high school with a full scholarship to Oregon State. I stood in the audience, tears streaming down my face, thinking about the path that had led us here. The accident that killed our parents, the job at a corrupt nursing home, an old woman who pretended to be senile to catch killers. Danny's graduation party was small, just a few friends and Eleanor, who'd become like a grandmother to both of us. She pulled me aside during the celebration. "I have something for you," she said, handing me a small box. Inside was a necklace, a simple silver pendant in the shape of a scale. "Justice," Eleanor said. "It's not always swift, and it's not always obvious, but it's always worth fighting for. Christine would have liked you, Sarah. You remind me of her." I hugged her tightly, this fierce, brilliant woman who'd taught me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is wait. Wait 3 days, trust your instincts, stand up even when it costs you everything. At Riverside, we implemented new protocols: transparent medication management, family access to all records, surprise state inspections. We hired enough staff so nurses weren't forced to choose between proper care and meeting quotas. And we never, ever punish someone for asking questions. I still work there, 8 years later. I'm 36 now, and Danny just finished his master's degree in social work. He wants to work with foster kids, help them the way people helped us. Eleanor passed away last year at 89. She died peacefully in her sleep at her nephew's house, surrounded by family. At her funeral, I met Christine's mother, Eleanor's daughter, for the first time. "Thank you," she said simply, holding both my hands in hers. "Thank you for helping Mom finish what she started. Thank you for making sure my daughter's death mattered." I think about that night sometimes. The night Eleanor grabbed my wrist and told me to wait 3 days. What if I'd signed those papers? What if I'd taken the easy money and walked away? 12 other people would have died, probably. The fraud would have continued. Eleanor's evidence would have stayed hidden in a notebook, and I would have spent the rest of my life wondering if I could have made a difference. Instead, I learned that sometimes the voice everyone else dismisses is the one telling the truth. Sometimes the person everyone thinks is crazy is the sanest one in the room. And sometimes, when everyone is pushing you to make a decision right now, the bravest thing you can do is wait. Wait 3 days. Trust yourself. And never, ever ignore someone just because the world has decided they're not worth listening to. The residents at Riverside taught me that every single day, every person has a story, every person has value, and sometimes the quiet ones watching from the corners know exactly what's happening. They're just waiting for someone to actually listen. I still keep Eleanor's notebook in my desk drawer. The FBI returned it after the trial. Sometimes, when I'm having a hard day, when I'm doubting myself, I pull it out and read through her meticulous notes. Evidence of one woman's patience, determination, and absolute refusal to let injustice stand. She didn't have superpowers. She didn't have wealth or influence anymore. She just had time, intelligence, and the willingness to pretend to be something she wasn't in order to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. And she had faith that when the right person came along, they'd listen. I'm grateful every single day that I was that person, that I didn't sign those papers, that I waited 3 days, just like she told me to. Because sometimes, That's all it takes to change everything. 3 days, one choice, and the courage to trust that the crazy old lady who everyone else ignores might just be the smartest person in the room.